Hey, hey,
Woohoo!
we're
It's
live.
the
All
moment.
right.
It's the book we've all been waiting for.
Welcome back to Wine on an Empty Stomach, brought to you by A Thousand Eyes and One podcast. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Nikki. Welcome back.
We are so excited about this book. We've been waiting a year more to talk about
More.
it. Yeah. Well, a year since we actually started posting our book club, but more than a year since we read it. Um, we started our book club because of this book. Um, I think how did we went to the signing, right?
Yeah. With Sulu, who was
With
so
baby
young at
Sulu,
that
yeah.
time. Baby Sulu. Yeah, sorry. Now I've got my things sorted out. Um we went to the I guess we read the book and then we went to the signing and NK Jemisin so graciously signed all three of our copies.
Yep.
Tanya had the whole series, I had the whole series, and she signed each actually I have it here. Signed each and every one of them. And oh, you're not gonna see. Hold on. Signed, so super nerdgasm moment. But then we like this book so much we can't stop talking about it because it's unlike anything I've ever read before. Like, sure, it's speculative fiction, sure, it's dystopian, sure, it's post-apocalyptic and all those vibes, but it took me maybe like 5 or 6 pages to really understand that I was reading someone who was writing in a style I had never encountered before. And I was a little bit uncomfortable with it, to be completely honest. I was like, what is this type of storytelling? And then I read like a perfect sentence and I was sold. And after that, I was just like, full speed ahead into the story. And Tanya and I, as we were doing our rereads and like reading and re-listening to this book, I was telling her that there's the way that the words and the writing are constructed is such a huge part of the book that I feel like, if you listen to it on the audiobook, you'll get the experience and you'll get the story, but there is something that's really integral to the story that has to do with the words on the page for this one. I think more so than other stuff that we've read. So highly recommend reading the book if you get a chance.
Yeah, I'm glad you
It's
said that.
incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it's where she puts the words on the page is so intentional.
Hmm.
So like the visual experience of reading it is meaningful
So
as
good.
well.
Oh my God. Oh my
I
God.
haven't finished the audiobook. I only started it because I ended up just wanting to read it
To read
again.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, this book was on, I came across it on a list of like must reads a few years ago and forgot about it. And then my Facebook memories popped up and I had posted something about wanting to read it and hadn't read it yet. And by then the second book was out. So I
Hmm.
bought it, read it, was completely obsessed, read the second one. And thank God the third one was just about to come out as I was reading the second one because unfinished
Oh,
series, you already know.
we still got love for you, George. No worries. We're not in the hater bandwagon. We don't take your time. We'll be patient. There are
Yeah,
other things
we
to
want it
read.
to be good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this story, she said multiple times that this is not Earth that we know. This is a
Hmm.
completely different planet, so don't compare it to Earth.
Yep.
But it's a planet and it's called the Stillness, despite the fact that it's always moving.
Yes. Lots of tectonic activity, and I don't. Go ahead. I don't even know where to start.
So we start at the end of the world, the end of the world as we know it, right?
Hmm.
Um, with an unnamed speaker. Well, no, we start with the woman whose son has died, right? And
Yeah.
then we go to the unnamed speaker with the inhuman companion who's
Hmm.
in the process of ending the world. So this is definitely a book you have to reread because it wasn't until my second read that I really remembered all of that and who that
Yeah.
was. We won't get into that until we announce spoiler alert time, but
But there will be
um
spoilers, so
yes,
just
this is
letting
going
you.
to
There's no.
be
There's almost impossible to talk about without spoilers.
yeah. You can't talk about it without spoilers. Um and we there's so many clues in the beginning for what we get to in the very last line. And so it's a book that you definitely do have to reread, because when you reread it, you realize that she's been hinting this whole time as to what we need to be trying to understand, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you want to get into the plot, or do you want to?
So maybe we should talk. Well, yeah, I was gonna say let's talk about the characters, but I guess that's a huge spoiler. So,
All right. Spoiler alert, starting from now, it's going to be spoilery. So
yeah,
if you don't want spoilers, do you hear that screaming?
I do.
Sorry.
It's okay.
If you don't want spoilers, look away, run away, come back later.
Come back after you've read the book.
Yeah, come back after you've read it. So starting now, we're going to have spoilers. So these three characters, Damaya, Cyanite, and Esun.
AK said, "Mark this date on the calendar. We're talking spoilers."
Well, it's just impossible. It's impossible.
Trust. We tried to figure out how to do it without spoilers. And the way, because, well, I guess we should let you guys know we're going to do all three books.
Yes,
we've decided to dedicate the next two book clubs to doing this entire series because we love it so much. And the reread was important for us because we had to figure out where this particular story ended and like what happened in the next two books. And this is just the beginning, this is all the world building to get you ready for like where it actually goes afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, Micah, we're gonna definitely do the next two books. Yeah, you're right. It's you can't just leave here and not come back. Because I got excited about the trilogy all over again, and I was gonna reread it either way.
Yes.
So I was like, you know what? Let's do our next couple of book clubs, and we'll push the book we were gonna do. We'll just push it back. Whatever. So we meet. Okay, the beginning. The woman whose son has died, Esun. We meet Esun. Then we find out the world is ending. And then we meet Damaya, a little girl. And that's where we first learn about Originy. Damaya, what did you, I'm trying to read comments at the same time.
I'm reading the comments at the same time, yeah.
So starting with Damaya, I felt so bad for her.
Oh my God. Yeah. You have like this little person who's been hidden away by her family. And then your view about the family really comes to change. But, as far as she's basically living a very substandard life. It's almost like she's being kept prisoner.
Yeah. They've had her
prisoner within our own house.
Yeah. They've had her locked in the barn for 2 weeks. She's pooping in a corner. They didn't even give her a bucket. They didn't give her blankets. And this is where we start to learn about what people's perceptions of origins are. Yep. They believe that they don't feel cold. They believe that they're dangerous, which they can be dangerous if they remain untrained.
But they're basically not human.
Right. They don't believe they're human, but they totally are human. So I felt bad for little Dama, the name she hates. And I started off hating her mother because it's like, this is like Damaya was saying, like, but wouldn't you want to risk it all to save me? And we Shafa, a guardian, who we first learn about the guardians and what they do, what they are. I know. He sounds so terrifying. They describe him as having like these broad shoulders, but then his body kind of tapers. And then he has these ice white eyes and this really, really black hair. He sounds like a vampire.
He gave me like a little bit of a demonic Hagrid. I was just picturing somebody just massive.
See, I was picturing somebody very thin.
Oh, interesting.
Almost like an anime look, like the wide shoulders and the very narrow waist
taper
and
down,
hips.
Like the triangle.
Yeah. That's kind of how I pictured him. And then even though I know he wears a maroon uniform, in my mind I keep picturing black, but it's the Origins who wear black.
Yeah, the Origins wear black and then burgundy.
So she thinks she's being taken by a child stealer, and obviously she's not. She's going to the folk room.
And we're led to believe like this is like her salvation, like someone has come to save her from her circumstances, and this is going to be really great. But we learn along the way that she's going from one sort of like slavery to another.
Yeah, it's like a fucked up Hogwarts, the Fulcrum.
Yeah.
Um, the turning point for me with Damaya realizing like, okay, no, this is no good, is when he breaks
Ooh.
her hand
When he breaks her hand on the pommel of the saddle. Oh my
to
God.
make her prove one that she has control. So not just breaking her hand, but breaking her hand, and then you find out he had that glass knife aimed at her heart,
Mhm.
so that if she did lose control, he could kill her
That he could
quickly.
just kill her, right? Yeah, I would say like this is in this series, um, like people discover that their origins through stress, like stressful situations. It's kind of like in Harry Potter where magic comes on like unexpected as a reaction to something.
Hmm.
And they talk about like if this is a skill that's like so innate that, newborns can do the things that they do. Like it's an instinctual reaction that they have to learn how to control their ability to, let's call it, talk to the earth. And oof, that hand breaking scene, it's just the pacing of that is just so slow and very deliberate, and you can just feel the pressure mounting like as he's going through that. And this is all of, because they're riding through an area of the country where Father Earth is very active. Like there's a lot of tectonic activity happening. And she finds herself tuning into it, and Shop was like, no, 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 no. That's not how this works. You don't get to just like ride on your instincts and like pull it and pull into the earth. And she didn't even realize she was doing it.
Right.
um, she didn't realize he was doing it, but and she said she can control herself, and he's like, "Well, can you?" And he subjects her to the hand breaking to see whether or not she can. And at that moment, because like all these other, this is happening parallel with like her other two storylines, you realize that she was also a prodigy. Like she was able to maintain control and not like ice him in her Taurus. And I feel like on a reread, you see like, oh, wait a second, this is why, and this is probably why they ended up pairing her with Alabaster, which I have a couple of theories about, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, it's in the beginning, it seems like Shafa cares about her and that
Mm-hmm.
he's there to take care of her. And, he's looking down on these poor, like rural people who just kill their origins. And of
Mm-hmm.
course we realize that the fulcrum really isn't that different.
Yeah.
And when he broke her, and then, you also, when she's at the fulcrum, she sees other kids who've just arrived and they have casts on their hands. So this is a thing, it's a
Mm-hmm.
regular
This
thing,
is a thing.
which
Yeah, this
makes
is
me
part of the
wonder
process.
how, yeah, and it made me wonder how many origins have been killed on the way to the fulcrum because they couldn't control.
Mm-hmm.
How many have been killed? And we can get into the node stations later, but how many end up in node stations?
That's the worst part of the book, man. It's the most
Yeah.
disturbing part. I despise Shafa so in book one so much. I don't, I don't really know my feelings by the end. And AK is right. All this time he's telling her that he loved her, and she's just like she's come from such a broken background that she's trying. He's the first person who's accepted her, and she thinks is accepting her for who she is. But he looks down upon her in the same way and believes like their powers are to be controlled. Their powers are the um, to serve the stillness, and it's his job to protect the stillness from that the things that she is. But it's very much an abusive relationship. It's
Right.
very very much manipulative. It's very much uh oh god, just like the like her, I don't know,
Well,
like the
it's
power dynamics.
it's very, I'm the only one who loves you. I'm the only one who can understand you, and I'm gonna kill you if
Hmm.
you get out of line.
But I'm going to kill you if you stay in line, and if I need to, if the need arises, even though you're keeping in line, I'm going to kill you then too. And
Right.
her poor little girl's heart is just like so hungry for love and so hungry for all of these things that she's just like doesn't stop to think that it's Diddlefinger.
Yeah, Shafa. This is from the comments. Yeah, Shafa gives off
uh,
loads of Diddlefinger and Jorah vibes.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
That's my train of thought.
um so, and then at the fulcrum,
Hmm.
we kind of get an idea of what it's like there. There are kids who are born at the fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
They're kids who are brought to the fulcrum. Um, Demaya gets bullied in the beginning. The whole stealing her shoes, and then that one handsome guy who's
Mm-hmm.
really nice to her, and the girl Crack, who they kept trying to break.
Yeah.
Um, they were hoping, I guess, that she would have some type of cataclysmic response for fun. I don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
goal of, children are crazy. But Crack is never mentioned again, Demaya says, after the whole pranking thing goes awry and she finds out that Crack was at the head of it. Um, and so, like, again, you got to wonder, was she killed or did she end up at a node station? So let's talk
I
about
don't know.
cyanite.
Let's talk about
Obviously,
cyanide.
we learn through Demaya and her meeting with Binoff and their whole thing that Demaya chooses the name Cyanite as her
Mm-hmm.
origin name. So they all choose a
Yep.
name of some type of stone. And that's the moment we realize that we're following one person's storyline, not three.
Yep.
Because going into it, you think it's just this girl Demaya, this
This
young
girl
woman
Maya,
Cyanite, and this
cyanide,
older
and then
woman
yeah,
Esun. And now we
who's
know,
on a
right.
who's on a
Now we
mission to
know
find
that
her daughter and kill her husband.
right, right. Because so now we know that Demaya is a young Cyanite, and it
Mm-hmm.
starts to kind of change the story. Because up until this point, not change the story, but change how we're perceiving it. Because up until this
Mm-hmm.
point, we know that Esun came home, her son is an origin, and she's been keeping it hidden, and he's
Mm-hmm.
been beaten to death by her husband, who apparently has never shown any signs of violence up until this point.
Yeah.
And so it shows how extreme the reaction to Origine is, which, when you think about it, is so stupid. Because why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to protect the one person who can protect your
Everybody.
entire village
Yeah.
from
You can
shapes?
see like the indoctrination that they as a society are going through, like, you know, just that they're all made to believe like origins are bad, they're dangerous. The only place for them is in the fulcrum because that's where the guardians can take control of them, and like even the guardian's name, the name of guardian. But like if you're out in a small calm out where they don't get exposed to much else, like all you know is that these people are bad and they're dangerous and you have to protect yourselves from them. Not that, oh, they could actually save your life. Like the only reason that village is alive is because there are origins in it.
This is from Micah Clark. I just looked up cyanite rock and it's described as an intrusive rock, which is so fitting.
Mhm. Yeah, and even
It
when
is fitting.
Shafa, when she tells Shafa her name, he was like, "Oh, it forms around the edges, and there it's hard to break." And he's like, "Basically, this fits you." And she was very
Yeah.
proud of that.
So they choose an origine, their slave name, I guess, when you think about it,
Mm,
right?
yeah, really.
You would think in a society where you're in constant danger of natural disaster, that if there was a type of human who can protect your community, that you would want to
Mm,
keep them. But because they've been taught this whole time that origins are completely, I mean, excuse me, I mean, I get that an untrained origin can be really dangerous. You don't want, like, Demaya, the reason she's found out is because she almost ices a boy to death
mhm.
because he
He was
pushed her and she
bullying her.
reacted. He was bullying her
Yeah,
and
he was always
she
coming for her.
reacted and didn't even know what she was doing. And it's because she's untrained and she's
Mm-hmm.
young. So, like, I get the idea of, you know, they need to be trained so that they don't accidentally hurt people. But you would think a community would want to protect those people. But when you think about it, the reason they don't is because it gives an excuse to essentially enslave them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Of
it's
course.
it's it's similar to how any community gets enslaved. You dehumanize them and make it seem like they're out of control and that they need to,
Mm-hmm.
be basically taken care of like cattle. And
Yeah.
if you tell yourself enough, well, they're not really human, then you
Then
can
anything is possible.
absolve yourself of the guilt of it
Exactly.
for enslaving them.
Hmm. And
And
it's
so
just
the
like, okay, well, the process of like the flow of how it's supposed to be. Ideally, there's an origin in your community, you discover them, you contact the fulcrum sends a guardian to come get them and bring them back over there so they can train them and basically harness their powers for the good of the realm. But that doesn't always happen.
Right. One of the things Shaf is worried about when he's leaving with Demaya is that they'll be followed by villagers who want to kill her. They say that there's a saying in their teachings to find the center of the circle. So if there's a huge shake and your community somehow isn't hit and it's like looks like a circle has around it, has protected it, find the center and there you have a raga, as they call them, which I feel like a little close to the N word there with those
She
G's
knew
in the
what she
middle.
was doing. Yes, she did. She knew what
Right.
she was doing.
Right. Um, they say find the center. And so yeah, so these people have been so conditioned to hate them that it goes beyond any sense of common sense.
All logic.
Um,
Defies all logic.
Here's a comment. Yet the islanders later in the book don't have that same fear of untrained origins, even though they live on a fault line. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, when Cyanate is on that island,
Mayoff.
Meov,
Mm-hmm.
they they make origins their leaders
Yep.
because that's how they're able to live on an island. They're protected from tsunamis,
They're
they're protected
protected,
from shakes,
exactly.
and it just makes and it makes sense. But it's because they never joined like the Sanzid Empire, really. So they didn't get the same type. I don't even know if what to call it, racism, bigotry, I guess, just
Yeah,
general
maybe.
bigotry,
Yeah.
because they come from different origins, come from different races. But there's this bigotry against them, which we haven't gotten into why it started. I guess we'll get into that in the later books.
In the later book.
um Demaya and Beanoff. So there's so many important things that happen, and we really want to try to keep this to an hour.
Definitely, Micah. He's like indoctrination. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's
Yeah.
indoctrination.
Hmm.
Um,
Because they teach you in crèche, which is like basically their elementary school or fundamental learning that they teach you about the tablets, which has got all the rules about stone lore, rather stone lore, which is basically how to survive in
in a season,
in a
in a
season.
in a fifth
You know.
season. It took me a minute too to realize what fifth season meant.
Hmm.
It didn't come to me right away.
Yeah, there's a quote somewhere in the book where she talks about it like death being the fifth season.
Yeah, it's like the extended winter.
Hmm.
Like we have winter, spring, summer, fall, and then the fifth season, which is
The long night.
the long night is the fifth season. Um, AK Watch says, I would love to see the very beginning of this world, like where Origins always hated this way, or did something happen to turn everyone against them? You'll
The
find out.
answer to that is in the next
That's
book.
why we'll do the other books. Because
Yeah,
we really can't stop here.
we can't tell you. Yeah.
um, they find Binoff and Demaya
The
find
Maya.
two really big things happen in Demaya's
Hmm.
storyline. We
Hmm.
find this giant plug like thing, a socket in the
The
center
socket.
of the fulcrum. We don't know what it
Hmm.
is, but we know that it has something to do with the obelisks, right?
Hmm.
The other big thing is the guardian who finds them has some kind of glitch, and
Yes.
Shafa has to kill her by removing something from the back of her head.
His
So
bare
we know
hands.
that the guardians have some type of weirdness, and
Hmm.
they have this implant in their cecipine, which is
Hmm.
this other organ that's in this
Yeah.
world, that's in the base of your brain, that your like brain stem or whatever. Um, so those are like two really big things that happen with Demaya. Now later, when we're meeting Cyanite, we find out about the fulcrum and their breeding programs.
Their breeding program. She started. That's how we meet her initially. She's introduced to us as this woman. She's got 4 rings. They're going to pair her up with a 10 ringer, because that's their scale of basically measuring ability, and they're going to pair her with this 10 ringer to go clear a reef, a coral reef, and I forgot the name of the place, but to basically go clear Alia.
Alia.
Yeah, to clear a coral reef in Alia that's giving them problems. But while they're doing that, she has to have sex with this 10 ringer in the hopes of producing another origin of greater,
And
equal or
and
greater
they
power.
they take care to never outright tell her to do it, but it's
Hmm.
understood that that's what she's meant to do, and everybody
Yeah,
knows. And even the
they'll get
person,
pregnant.
right, even the person who's assigning her to him says she has 6 kids.
Mhm.
And obviously she's not raising them. They belong to the fulcrum. We
Yeah.
learn that children of origins who don't get origenic power become guardians because there's
Yeah.
something special about them, which we
Mhm.
find out more about the guardians in later books.
In later books, yeah. I
But
like that
the
that was a nice little tidbit that was dropped in there because you're like, well, what happens if two origins get together and they don't have and they have a baby and they can't speak to the earth? Like, oh, actually, they become guardians. You
right,
know, like they're not wasted. Wasted.
no, right.
Ugh.
On the road with Alabaster when
Mhm.
nobody at the not nobody.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about Alabaster, right? Like Alabaster is basically a prodigy. He's raw power and talent. He's been blowing through their ring tests, since he was
Right.
younger, and he's a 10 ringer.
He's
And
a
that's
10
just and
ringer and
she
there's only like a few. There's like
that's
two
the
living
yeah,
10 ringers or something like that.
exactly. And it's only 10 because that's where their testing goes up to, but he's probably like a
Yeah.
35 ringer. Let's keep it real. He's just super, super powerful. Um, and so, like, partially, I think when she's paired with him, it's like, yes, they have to breed, but she's hoping to get mentored by this person. And while I don't know if that's where you're going, but while they're on this journey, she realizes that she can feel what he's been doing all along. Like, he's going around just like, casually stopping minor earthquakes and things that are happening within. And I mean, I feel like the big part for Cyanite is visiting the node station where she
Yeah.
learns what this is all
What
about.
yeah, she learns what the node stations really are because she's like, I mean, there's people at the node stations who do
Yeah.
this and she sees it as like a
Mhm.
boring desk job. These origins are not
Exactly.
told what happens at the node stations. They just know that there's
Exactly.
stations out in the like rural areas that protect
Basi-
large swaths of land.
exactly. Exactly. Basically, their job is to keep shakes from reaching the communities that are outside of
Yemenis.
yeah, of Yemenis. And
Yeah.
so they're like, they're placed strategically around, still connected to the fulcrum, but like the job, it's like, you were a cop and then you got assigned to some far out station, or you're in the army, you got, deployed to some station that nobody really wants to go. And she thinks that these people are just bored, okay, stopping a quake here and there, and that it's a job that, nobody
It's
wants because
boring,
it's not as
like boring
exciting.
desk job. You just
Yeah.
sit there all day long reading a book and quelling shakes
Yeah, I
because
mean,
there's
and the
nothing.
whole time there's nothing there because she's been brought up not to ask questions, and that's where Alabaster is like, slowly working on breaking her mind open. But she very quickly finds out that node stations are not at all what she imagined them to be.
No.
Oh,
So we find out that these node stations are the young origins who couldn't cut it at the fulcrum. But again, they don't want to let a body go to waste, is really kind of what
hmm
it is, right? They don't want to
yeah.
let a body go to waste. So
And when you
they
say cut it, you mean like they cannot control their power.
they can't control their power. They're not going to get rings, but they find a use for them. They're like the fulcrum scraps almost, or that's how they're treated, like fulcrum
Makes me want to
scraps.
vomit.
It's horrible. And so you
It's
find
horrible.
out that a lot of these orogenic children are Alabaster's children. As far as he knows, he has at least 12.
Mm.
He doesn't get to find out what happens.
No.
When they go to this one node station, she sees the child, and it's obvious that it's Alabaster's child. It looks just like him. It's also obvious that this child has lost control, we think has lost control and killed
Mhm.
everyone, except we find out that he didn't lose control. He did it on purpose because they've been sexually abusing him.
Yeah.
So they're in the node stations. Maybe we should have done a trigger warning for that.
Yeah. Trigger
Sorry.
warning.
But they're in these stations and they're operated on so that they can't do anything but
Except
the
react.
instinctual reaction to shakes.
Hmm.
And so there's these perverts who get a kick out of like the helpless node station child. And this one somehow gains some sense of control and kills
Yeah.
everyone.
Basically, because they're saying that the way that they have the children who are on the node station is that they keep them just alive enough to do what they're supposed to still shakes, which
Right.
means that because they're in a lot of and because they've had like their cessipene like operated on, it's a very painful experience for them to have the shakes, and so they think it's more humane just to like basically keep them sedated at all times, like feed
Right.
them through feeding tubes, like take like basically they're in a coma. And they said that there are some perverts out there who pay for the privilege of basically having sex with these node maintainers, and some of them don't want them to be unconscious because that's how they get off on it. And it's like I don't if I there like you read things like it. I've
It was
never been so close
upsetting.
to throwing up while reading a book, but
Yeah.
that almost did it for me.
That part was definitely really upsetting to read. And it once again, it's like we're learning about this world along with
Hmm.
Cyanide, and
Hmm.
she does
Yeah,
throw
where
up.
she,
Cyanide does
yeah,
throw
she
up.
does. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's you get this just it's like a it's like a gut punch, to find out
Yeah,
like this is what's happening because along with Cyanide, you're thinking, oh, node station maintainer, it's
yeah.
boring, lowly, not going to get that many rings origin, but here's this like easy desk job, it'll make some use
Yeah.
of you, and then to find out not only um not only is it
Oh,
these people who couldn't control it, but like people who are being bred. It's just so many layers.
exploited. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so many
I think
layers of exploitation and
I
just
think the
horror.
I think the interesting I don't think I ever really picked up on it before, but as we're talking about it, we're just seeing the world like the order of things is established through like little hints here and there, but just seeing I don't want to say watching Cyanide become woke, but watching her become aware of what's actually going on. We're experiencing that at the same time as she is. And I think that is just brilliant. It's like
Yeah,
a little piece by little piece, we're like unwrapping and seeing what's actually at the center of all of these things and like the purpose for why these awful things are being done to them. And whew, with each
yeah, because
reveal, it's so intense and
it's
beautiful.
like you start off with, okay, Demaya's going to like Bizarro Hogwarts. Oh wait, no, this is a
Woo!
really fucked up Hogwarts because they break your hand before you get there and they'll kill you if you lose
Hmm.
control. Then it's like, oh
Your name is
shit.
Toby.
Yeah, and then it's like you get there and you start learning about it, and it's like, okay, this place is dangerous, but if you keep your head down and pass your ring tests, then you can get yourself somewhat of a life. Then you find out there's a breeding program, and it's like, well, shit, there's a fucking breeding program. Like, all right, this is getting kind of dark. And then past the
Hmm.
breeding program, it's like, what do they do with these other kids? Where do they go? And you find out now what's happening at node stations and what the node maintainers are, and it's like it's just like level after level of fucked up. And like you said,
Yeah.
your our eyes are getting opened along with Cyanide's eyes, and she is becoming more aware. And Alabaster has known all this stuff all along, and he's so fucking over
And
it.
he's the only one, right? Like he's like,
Right.
why
Oh,
doesn't
here's a
any?
good
Why is no
comment.
one else asking questions?
Here's a good comment for you.
Hmm. I feel like y'all can read.
I feel like Alabaster's character is such a great commentary on respectability, tokenism, and being the exceptional one out of your quote racial group.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. And Alabaster is
yeah.
sick of it.
He's sick of it. And the interesting thing about Alabaster is like we find out that he's done something to his guardian, so he's kind of like off the leash, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
we also
he's
find out that
also
he was part of he was born from the breeding
he was
program.
born from their breeding program, right? He's like a great success, but he's also so incredibly powerful that they can't just come for him on their own. Like you need a team to take down Alabaster. He oh my god, hold on.
Which one you want me to
Was
click
it?
on?
No, I think those are all fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just watching Alabaster be like the shining example of success of the breeding program, and for him to be like the lone person who's asking questions and it's because he's able to leave. He's able to leave and to build connections and build relationships with people who are outside of the fulcrum and to travel and see, traveling around around the world, quelling shakes and putting his powers to the test, that he's able to see that he understands that this is not right. He sees kind of like the cruelty and the inhumaneness of the system that they're being brought up within. And so it's no wonder that he wants to break it all up.
I will break the wheel. Yeah, and like, you see that like it seems like Cyanide thinks, okay, well, this is the only way I can have a life, so I'm just gonna follow the Fulcrum rules. She's thinking about her next job, she's thinking about promotions, and
Hmm.
he's saying, like, no, 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 like, fuck all of this.
Yeah,
You need to open your eyes and see what this really is. But
exactly.
when you've spent it's not just her life, but it's been generations of
Generations. This is how
this
society
world,
is.
like and so it seems like something that can't end, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
this is just the world you live in, and so you try to find a
You
way
try
to
to excel
make it
within
work
the
for
fucked up
you.
system. Yeah.
Right, right. um
Oh, gosh.
I'm like sweating thinking about Alabaster.
Alabaster. Oh
I
man.
I started off kind of hating him. No, I didn't hate him. I just thought he was kind
You're
of a
just like,
dick.
what's your problem?
Right. And it's because we're reading it from Cyanite's perspective, right? Where
Yeah.
because she's
Hmm.
annoyed by him, so automatically I was annoyed by him. And
Yeah.
in their first meeting where she has to just go and just like have sex with him and just kind of like get it over with. It's like the most awkward, just like, she's just like, all right, I'm just gonna get on top and handle it. It's just like, oh God. And then I
Yeah.
started to feel bad for him because we find out that when he first started the breeding program, he didn't know that he was being used as like a buck. He
Yeah.
thought these women were
He was a
interested in
stud.
him.
Yeah.
They and then they sent eventually 12, right?
Hmm.
And we also find out that Alabaster's into dudes. So he didn't
Yeah.
even,
So
I don't
this was not fun for him at all. It was a
yeah.
chore.
Because he apparently had somebody. You mentioned him disposing of his guardian, which was a type of power that we learn about later. We'll talk
Hmm.
about Miev in a sec, but he had a lover while he was at the fulcrum, and terrible things happened to that person, and
Yeah.
so he has more than just a little chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
He is beyond angry. He's like ready to be he's ready to be a terrorist pretty much, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
um
I was just imagining myself wearing a shirt that said Team Alabaster. I think we need to make that. Um, but yeah, no,
um
the Fulcrum is obsessed with making copies of him because, I mean, you don't need those children to grow up to be effective, right? You just like, all right, take out the Suscepane, throw them in a node station because they can just do it, and they can do it at like just like the power behind his child that did basically. I mean, if they hadn't stopped what he was doing, it would have been, it could have
they
started
would
an
have
entire,
kicked
even
off a
though there was,
season.
yeah, which has already been kicked off, right? Well, no, not at that point,
Well,
but it would
no,
have
not
kicked
at
off the
this point.
season.
Yeah, it would have kicked off a
Yeah.
season. Yeah,
So yeah.
Alabaster's been through a lot. He doesn't know who his parents are. It's just two other origins who were bred to make him.
Hmm.
And then he's made to just breed with whoever. For all he knows, he could have had a baby with a sibling. He wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
He never gets to see what
Yeah.
happens to his children until he finds out about whenever it is that he found out about what the node maintainers really were.
Hmm.
Um, so that must be incredibly painful. So they get to Alia and someone tries to poison him. And that's where we first learn about exactly how powerful he is, because he connected to
To cyanide
Cyanite earlier to use
before
her
the node
power.
station. Yeah.
Uh-huh, to use her power. And she has no idea what the hell he's doing.
Yeah. And it's in her mind because they've been taught that origins can't work together. It's just like you can't link that kind of destructive power without catastrophe. And here
And
he
it's
is like,
very likely that the Fulcrum doesn't know that Origins can do that,
mm,
because Alabaster is a level of power they haven't encountered before.
yeah.
So it's possible that they weren't keeping that from her, that they really just didn't know. So he does it again, and that's when she finds out he can link to the Obelisk, and
Mhm.
he's able to pinpoint his power so precisely that he can remove the poison from his own bloodstream.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is something else.
Yeah, and for the parts like that, I really enjoy having like getting this from Cyanide's POV because like she is shocked and bewildered that this is even possible. Like it's I like just for you to say that, I'm thinking about like just poisoning in general and just to be able to isolate those molecules and to draw them out of your system.
Right.
It's what the fuck? Yeah.
Um so when I first read it, I started thinking it was going to be a mystery about who tried to
Who
poison
tried to
Alabaster.
poison?
And it's like you quickly realize it really doesn't matter who,
It doesn't matter because
because
yeah, he's got another fate coming from him. He's not going to die of poison.
no. Guardians show up, try to kill them in Alia. Oh, actually, before
And
we talk
that's
about that, one of the things I appreciated with Alabaster was the way he forced the uh, lieutenant governor woman to
yeah,
show him
whatever her
some
name was.
respect.
Oh, I love that part of it. He's like,
I
listen, we
loved
just
it.
traveled from all the way over here. You don't know what we're like. Hello, we're coming here to save your community. Treat us with respect. And I think that that was a big eye opener for Cyanite. You know, like we are the powerful ones here. We
Mhm.
are. We should have more of a say. Just like you guys owe your livelihood and everything to us. So please act like you understand that. Uh, because I forgot what the person's name was, but whew, what a bitch.
Yeah, and when
Just
Cyanide,
basically not, and I can't, maybe I like part of it is like what a bitch is like, just there's like bigotry and ignorance that come along with it. Like obviously this is how this person has been, like they're a product of their society, right?
right?
But then like everybody else has, at least has it, for the sake of diplomatic relations, to be polite, what Cyanide keeps talking about, right? Like the politeness of
Wait,
the
you
folk
didn't
and
even offer
teaching.
me a cup of safe to drink.
Ugh, safe.
I know it sounds nasty, right?
No, everything about safe sounds disgusting.
I just imagine it being all chalky.
Ugh.
But yeah. So their treatment there, you realize like even the fulcrum trained origins who come there to save your ass don't even get treated with a little bit of respect, but Alabaster demands it. And I appreciated that from
Mhm.
him because at first it does seem like, oh, he's just being an asshole. But then it's like, no, you're right. Like, why can't I be treated with like at least basic respect? Like, I'm here
Mhm.
to save your ass, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
So they get the nice hotel, and of course, someone tries to poison him.
Yep.
Um, we get more into the types of powers these guardians have, which Cyanite isn't aware of,
Yeah.
when they show up and dampen their powers.
Mhm.
That part had me terrified for them.
Like, how are they even supposed to come? Like, I don't know. I thought that it was Dunskies for Alabaster. It's like, oh my god. And then finding out that they can't touch, you should never touch them with their bare skin, and how the
Uh-huh.
one she's like, she's like eye evaluating the guardian with the shirt off. She doesn't realize he's a guardian. He's just a hot guy with no shirt on, and she's like checking him out because she's been having, joyless sex for who
Right.
knows how long with Alabaster. So she's like, oh, the pussy's winking. And then he's like, don't let him touch you. This is why. And then you find out later with poor Inan exactly why. But the fact that they're able to negate their powers and so effectively. Ugh,
While they're in
yeah.
Alia, she connects to an obelisk for the first time. And she sees a stone eater inside that she thinks is dead until it turns its head and
Mhm.
is like, hello. And I cannot wait to see that on screen. I
Oh, me
can't
neither.
wait. I am just, please God, let it be good. Um I can't wait.
Yeah,
Um I imagine you'll have to use tons of CGI to get it across
don't
the
care.
like
Give it to
the
me.
the stone eater, like what is it? What's the term? Oh god. What is it called? I can't remember
Well,
when something is not quite human but almost. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I
Oh, it's
do,
gonna
but I
drive me
can't think of the
crazy.
word. Okay.
But you know what I mean.
Yes, we'll say humanesque for now because I know what you're talking about. It's not that.
It's like on the tip of my tongue and I just can't bring it to the front of my mind what it is that I want to say. In any sense,
Mhm.
I think they're gonna have to use like some CGI for that because the stone eaters are super creepy.
Yep.
Because they look so close to human, but they're not quite there. Uncanny Valley. Thank you, Micah. Oh, Uncanny Valley. That was gonna drive me insane. I was really about to stop the whole show and oops, I didn't mean to put that up. Um, and like look it up. Yeah, the Uncanny Valley. They're probably gonna need to use some CGI for that, which is great. I mean, we've come a long
Fine.
way with CGI, so that'd be great.
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be a show, not a movie. I think it's gonna be a series. I
Yeah,
think, but I'm not
I
totally
think so
sure.
too. I didn't think it
But
was going
I
to be a
also
movie.
think that N.K. Jemisin is going to be one of the actual showrunners for it.
Well,
She
she
did it.
needs to be.
Yeah, but they don't always do that. They don't always give them that
Yeah.
type of let them have that type of input, but she will. So that gives me hope. Um, Ibi Ali says the movie show better be great. I'm already fan casting. Oh my god, that could be an entire episode on its
Yeah,
own.
I would love it to be a show. And just like it's just everything about there because the obelisks are like they're a huge mystery. You don't know what's going on. You know, there's like these giant crystals in the sky that kind of just float around.
And they're
Nobody
like
really knows
kilometers long. They're
how
not
they're
like,
yeah,
you
they're
know,
not like
little, yeah,
they're
they're
celestial
huge.
objects. They're
Yeah.
celestial objects, and I don't know if we should talk
And
about celestial
th-
objects or what
well, we'll
or
we'll
not.
get to it. Because so we know that the obelisks are from a previous civilization, dead civs as they
Hmm.
call them.
Dead sibs.
And
Hmm.
nobody living knows what they do, really. They're just there. They're
They're
left
just there.
over.
They've always been there. They don't know how or why or if they serve any purpose. They're just there. They move on their own accord or they think they do. And yeah, nobody knows that they're like this like untapped crystal, ginormous crystals of power.
Right. So fast
Hmm.
forward to Antimony, the Stone Eater, dragging them through the ground and
Fast
pulling
forward or
them.
rewind.
Yeah,
Hmm.
well, to getting to Meov, this small island nation where they respect origins and let them lead. And we meet
Hmm.
Inon, who sound very sexy, and
Yeah,
they become a throuple, which is very forward thinking of them. This family of
I
three.
love
We also
that.
learn. I'm just like fast forwarding. We learn that Cyanide is pregnant, and they
With
have a
Alabaster's baby.
powerful origin baby that the Fulcrum always wanted,
Hmm.
um, Koru. But of course, that this can't last, right?
No,
We know that it
their
can't last.
happiness can't last.
Um,
Because eventually, I mean, because I mean, let's from the second that she went out on that pirating mission with them and did what she did, I was like, oh man. And like I think that even more on this on my reread was I was just like, how would they not discover that you were somehow behind it? You know, like how
well,
would
I
they
mean,
not
they
track you
left
down?
it. We've learned that they left it smoldering on purpose.
Yeah.
It's because they knew she wouldn't be able to
Somebody would
not
come back and do
stop the
it. Yeah.
volcano. So
Yep.
and it was a trap. It was a trap all along. Um, Inon wouldn't have had the precision to be able to fix it. He might have been able to stop any tidal waves from hitting
Hmm.
me off, but he wasn't on his own going to go all the way back to Alia and try to fix it. She
No.
fixes this, she stops everything and fixes it and feels good, and then realizes there's a guardian there. So
Oh, that part, that whole section where she's like, she
my
sees a
guts
figure
were
and she's on the ridge. I
churning.
was just like, oh my God. And she like sees, she's like, it was wearing burgundy and just,
Yeah,
oh,
that had
the
my
terror.
guts in just anguish, because
Yeah.
on my first read, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew it was going to be
Hmm.
bad. On my second read, I was really just dreading it. I
Hmm.
had actually considered skipping that part, um,
Yeah.
because it just hurts so much. So
Yeah.
they come to Miov, they kill a bunch of people. The Guardians are there. They bring Origins to fight, which made me hate those Origins. But at the same time,
Yeah. Okay.
they
They don't know.
they don't know.
They're not awake,
They're
you
doing
know?
their job.
Exactly.
And we learn what it is that Guardian did to Alabaster's lover.
Lover.
He
Yeah.
said that he turned his power inward, which we still don't understand fully what is happening. But
Hmm.
this Guardian grabs Inon and basically makes him explode.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
while she's seeing this happen, Alabaster tells her to not let them take
No,
Koru,
not to
no matter
Corey. They're
the
gonna take him
cost.
no matter what because they know what he knows where he's gonna end up. This baby's gonna end up in a node station because she doesn't realize how powerful Koru is, and she's thinking like Alabaster has been the one like quelling shakes and all this stuff around her, but it's this baby
So
who's
he's
been
been
doing
doing
it
it
this whole
for like a
time.
year. He
Yeah.
doesn't even know he's doing it. And so, huge spoiler, very sad. She kills Koru. She suffocates him to keep
Hmm.
him from being
Getting into
taken.
Shafa and Guardian's hands.
And that part is like, it always forces me to like, because I have children. So
Hmm.
it always forces me to think like, what would I do? if I had to kill one of my kids to save them? And it's like the
Yeah.
hardest thing to think about. It's hard to read anyway, just as a human who has feelings, it's hard to read. But I was reading this my most recent reread, I was reading this while holding my baby, and it like completely broke me. Like
Mhm.
it made me way sadder than it did on my previous reads,
Right.
because this time it was like I had like a physical child in front of me that I'm looking at, and starting to think like, what could that feel like?
Yeah. And just to know that like whatever you're doing is more merciful than any future they could
Right.
possibly have.
Right.
It's like that, weighing those options. Like, is it better to keep your child alive and like know exactly what they're going to be suffering, or is it better just like
Right.
it is very beloved by Toni Morrison.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, you go, at least for me, I go through the mental rabbit hole of like, damn, what did my ancestors go through? You know, children born into slavery who,
Hmm.
um, or even children who didn't even make it through the Middle Passage, whose
Yeah.
parents probably killed them knowing what was coming. And it's just like, ugh, I think about it too, like, with like the zombie apocalypse. If we had a zombie apocalypse, would I want my children to try to live through it, or
Yeah.
would I want to end it all? And it's just like, so anyway, I ended up in this whole like rabbit hole, and it hurts. It's rough. Um
Yeah.
so
And then we see Alabaster get taken away by a
y-
stone eater. Like we
dragged
know
through
that
the
they can
ground.
travel, and that whole part is so devastating, so
Right, because
devastating.
he's
But then it
fighting
gives you a
so
hint of
hard.
like to be able to stay there and fight, because like let's keep it real, like Alabaster doesn't really know she'll do what it takes, and he doesn't know what that might come to. He
Right.
suspects it, I think, but I mean, throughout that whole period, you can tell that he was so happy being able to raise his child and to be a dad. And she was just like, yeah, no, that's cool. But like, I want to go do this other shit. Like, I wasn't,
Yeah, she was
that's,
bored. She was
she,
completely
she had other
bored.
things in mind. Um, but then, and as Mike was saying, like, yeah, she loses everything. And then if we have to like backtrack a little bit, and then we pick it back up on Esun's story.
I was just
This is
about
where
to
it all
say,
comes back together.
it all comes back. So now, through all of this, we learn that this woman, Cyanide, who has had to kill her own child, who's been bred like an animal, who briefly found peace, has been
Hmm.
chased by guardians, we learn that that is Esun, who has come
Yeah.
home to find her dead toddler that her husband has beaten to death. She doesn't know if her daughter is dead or alive. She just knows that she's
Hmm.
gone, and she's losing everything again.
Yeah.
And God, I
And
feel
she's
bad
just
for
so
Esun.
numb. She's just
Yeah.
so numb, like I feel like those maybe even up until she sees Alabaster, even it's just like she does not. She's just going through the motions. She's like, all right, I have to
And
survive.
she's
Let me
repeatedly
just find another
reminding
place.
herself to not think, because if
Yeah,
she
yeah.
thinks, she's going to feel, and she just cannot
She
do that
can't.
right
She
now,
can't do it
because
again.
she
She
needs to
can't go through it
focus
again.
on getting to Nasun.
Yeah. She
Whew.
reminds herself that I'm still a mother. I still have one child out there, and I have to figure out how to get to her. And then we meet Hoa.
Hoa sounded really cute to me. He
Yeah,
sounded
sounded cute to me
adorable
too.
until he killed, what was that animal called?
Oh, I forgot with the
I have the book
fucking.
open. Let me see.
I don't
Uh
remember, but it sounded terrifying.
Anyway, whatever that animal is that they like eat plants until a season starts.
Everything changes in a season.
Everything changes
Everything
in a
changes during
season.
a season, right?
Yeah. And those little pets start getting a taste for meat in a
Yeah,
season.
it's like once they I think, like eat ash or like drink ash or whatever. Once they ingest ash, it flips them and
It
they go into
flips. Yeah.
survival mode,
Yeah.
and they start basically becoming hunters. And Hoa stops it, turns that thing into stone.
Hmm.
Oh God, I really don't remember.
I'm trying to look.
Um,
Scrolling through the book now. I'm trying to find it,
right.
but keep going. I'll
Yeah, but
find it.
but he kills it, and she's surprised because she's like, wait a second, so you're not a kid. And Tonki, who was there, who is been off, is also there, and is like, wait a second. Um, and so she learns that this is not a normal I feel like she was so numb she wasn't picking up on a lot of the cues. Like she says later in the book, she's like, I've never seen him breathe. And this is at the
Right.
very end of the book that she's like, I've never seen him breathe. I've never seen him eat until the one time he eats in front of her. Um,
Right.
you know,
Those
and
little
maybe
crystals.
yeah, I want to talk about that, but I feel like that's for the next book. How is crystals?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, let's talk about Tonki. We find out before we find out who Tonki is, we
mhm,
learn that Tonki clearly has studied at university and is a geomist.
mhm,
Then we learn that Tonki is trans
yep,
and is trying to hide it, but Esun doesn't really care. She's just kind of like, whatever.
yeah,
But we learn that it matters later because Tonki is Binoff from the very beginning, who's from
mhm.
a leadership family and met Demaya way back
At the
when.
fulcrum
Binoff is the one who found the room with the huge socket
socket.
and has been researching the obelisks all this time. We find out that she's also been following Esun this whole time.
Yeah.
To and because what Esun doesn't realize is the obelisks follow her. Ever since she connected
Mhm.
to the one in Alia, they follow her. The reason that Binoff's being trans mattered is because it threw off her like arranged marriages because they
Right.
wanted to marry her to a woman as a man and
Yeah.
could not because she was trans, and it just like messed up their arrangements, and they figured it was easy to just like let her go to college or
Yeah.
university and just quietly disown her and let her go live her life. Micah says, I actually didn't catch that Tonki is trans until a friend told me. I got too distracted by the whole apocalypse happening. That's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a really quick thing. The first
Yeah.
time
She
it's
said she like
mentioned, yeah, the first time it's
when she's
mentioned is when
taking a
she's doing the
bath.
bath. Yeah, she notices
Yeah.
that Tonki has a penis and she's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's a surprise." But it's really not a big deal. And then later
Yeah.
on, Tonki runs out of whatever it is that she's taking that suppresses hair growth, so she starts
Mhm.
shaving.
Yeah.
And then when she realizes that Tonki is Beanoff is when it all comes together why
Yeah.
Tonki is going through all this trouble.
That was
With
such a crazy reveal for me, like realizing that that was the same person. This annoying little
right.
girl is this person because I honestly didn't see it coming and I forgot about it in my reread and I didn't see it coming again. I was like, oh
No, I
yeah,
didn't forget about it,
they're the
but I
same.
I absolutely did not see it coming that Tonki would be Beanoff. I didn't see it coming at all,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what the I thought we were done with Beanoff's story by her
Yeah.
finding the socket and making us think about the obelisk. I thought that was the end
Hmm.
of Beanoff's story. So finding out
And
that
we don't
Beanoff
even
is Tonki,
yeah, and not
huh?
even realizing that that's what was there. Like, well, there used to be something in here. We don't know
Right.
what that is, right? And then making that connection that this obelisk and I mean, as she was always inquisitive, but she took that in, that curious nature and studied and has basically been following Essen ever since.
And her being disowned by her family is probably was worked out in her benefit because it gave her the
Yeah.
time to be able to continue her research and her
Yep.
studies and to find Esun, because otherwise she would have been married off to some whoever, leadership, whatever, and been giving some other type of job to do. Um Tonki's did you, sorry, that was my son. I don't know what happened. God, that just like threw me off.
Yeah,
Um
finding Tonki and that whole
Yeah,
storyline because
Tonki has been doing this research all this time. Esun had no idea that obelisks have been following her. We get to this underground comm inside a geode run by
so cool.
uh what's her name?
I keep saying Iki, but that's not her name.
Yika.
Yika.
Yika. They call her Yeek.
Yeah.
Run by Yika, who calls herself Yika Raga what's the name of the comm again? Kastrima.
History month.
Kastrima. It's an underground comm inside a geode that's basically powered by Origine,
Yep.
which they've never heard of before. And the
Hmm.
people who were there before suffocated there because they didn't, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, realize that, you need a Origin to make
Origin.
this work. Um,
Yep.
So that was a really interesting thing, that like this whole calm has been built. So maybe there was a time where origins were not treated so horribly. If this entire place has
Mm-hmm.
been built, the city above it is built as a cover almost, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
when she gets to Castrima, we find out that Yika has been like a homing signal calling
She.
origins to her,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
And she,
ho-
and she also has that connection. Like she, whatever Alabaster did, she's able to do on like in a different type of power,
mhm.
with a different type of power and reach. And it's really exciting because you're like, oh wait a second, there's more to Origini than just like, oh, taking care of a couple earthquakes and like raising things
Right,
out of the ground. Like
right, and
this
this is what
is this
Alabaster's been
power.
trying to tell her.
Yeah, like we're much
And
more useful than the way that they're basically keeping us together.
yeah, and I feel like Esun has wanted to just live a normal life so badly that it's been 12 years since Miav. Um, everyone died. She got away, but Alabaster got pulled through the stone. That whole thing happened, and now it's 12 years later. So she's in Castrima because Hoa is able to track origins for some reason. At
Mhm.
first, we don't know. Now we later learn he's a stone eater. How did you feel about the Hoa stone eater reveal?
I love that. I mean, I think this the second time. The first time I was a little bit suspicious because I was like, what is he eating? And like, was he able to do that? And then as I remembered like antimony, I was like, okay, well maybe it wasn't antimony, it was Yika's her
Oh,
stone
Yiga
eater.
stone eater. I
Yeah,
don't remember her name. Let me see if I can find it. Go ahead though. I'll see if I can find
yeah.
it.
And then so once they reacted to each other and like the kind of like the hissing standoff that they had, I was like, oh, you're not a human boy. Like everything about him was just a little bit too weird. Um, And so I wasn't surprised. But I think the most interesting thing was that one that he was able to track because he's able to track origins when he meets Alabaster Stone Eater, Antimony, that he's like, oh, I have no interest in you. My interest is in her, which hmm, foreboding. But
Hmm.
and I mean I get like fucked up thinking about that in the next couple of books. Um, hmm, we've got a bot.
Blocked.
Bye. Yeah, like watching those interactions. Like I think I was suspicious of Hoa the whole time because I didn't think that he was human. I thought that he was something else, but I wasn't sure if maybe he was like an origin who was just like keeping it on the wraps because he was able to detect where the rest of them were.
So
But I want to say something about the obelisk and the fact that, you
go
know,
for it.
like I was like, I feel like, and I guess it happens later, but I was waiting for her to make the connection after Tonki tells her, well, I was able to track you because of the obelisk. And Hoa tells her, or no, she tells her that there's a point where there were two obelisks outside of their village, right? And one went one
Hmm.
way and one went the other. And it kills me every time that she didn't ask to like, well, where did that other one go? Because maybe it's tracking my daughter, but whatever.
I did not know that Hoa means friend in Hawaiian. This is a comment. Interestingly, Hoa means friend in Hawaiian, so that was my immediate connection to him. Well, I mean, yeah, he seems like this little kid who's
Mm-hmm.
possibly lost his people. We don't know why
Yep.
he's naked, but who knows what happened? Who knows what he was doing while this whole thing went down? Because remember, she also still doesn't know what happened in the north. There was just a huge
Mm-hmm.
shake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, all right. So
Let's go to the prologue, right?
let's go. Yeah, right, right.
Which
Because
brings us back to the beginning.
yeah, it brings you back to the beginning. This whole obelisk or this thing that cracks open. Is this person comes out. Is it takes days. This is like liquid that comes out. They crack off a bunch of uh, crystals. Well, now we know
Mm-hmm.
that that was Hoa. And we
Yep.
learned that Hoa disguised himself as a child, which we did not know. No one knew that stone eaters can
Mm-hmm.
do, but no one really knows anything about stone eaters because they don't tell you
Yeah.
anything. He's been tracking her for some time
Yeah.
and has been just waiting for his moment. We don't know why. We learn on our reread. So in Castrima, she runs back into Lerna and learn of the doctor from her community, and then he
Oh
brings
yeah.
her, yeah, he brings her to Alabaster, who she hasn't seen in 12 years. This Alabaster is clearly dying. He
Hmm.
is part stone, and he's with
Yep.
Antimony, who
Yep.
again sounds terrifying.
Yep.
And she notices bite marks on the stone
His
part
stump.
of his limbs. So now we know what kind of stone eaters eat, but we don't know what that's about.
Mm. Yep. Not yet.
He gives her, he shows her the like knife that's made out of obelisk. And he's like, "Have you figured it out yet?" Because he's expecting her this whole time to have figured out how to connect to obelisks. All of these,
Hmm.
oh God, I
Like
can't wait to
intent,
talk
and to
about the
do
next
it,
book.
and to do it intentionally, not to do it by accident.
Right. And then you realize that the speaker in the very beginning
Yep.
was Alabaster.
Yep.
Alabaster ended the world, starting with
Broke the world.
Eumenes. He broke the
Yep.
world, starting with Eumenes. That for me was one of the biggest, just like jaw dropping moments. Like Alabaster, that was Alabaster in the beginning. And again, I
Yeah.
didn't, I mean, we find out, but it's not until my reread, when I'm rereading it, knowing that it's Alabaster, that I'm like, holy shit. Alabaster, she says, is not crazy. He knew what
Yeah.
he was doing.
He knew
He's not
exactly what he
crazy.
was
He's
doing.
vengeful.
He's exactly. It's fine. Like they have done everything they could possibly do to him. He was happy they took that from him, and he could not abide it anymore.
And he tells her he understands what happened with Koru, but he can't forgive her, which I
Mm.
imagine must have really hurt, especially because she lost Uche at the same around the same age that Koru
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Um, the
Yeah,
a
Micah.
lot of
Alabaster
people,
broke the wheel.
yeah, a lot of people felt like the big like reveal was that Damaya, Cyanite, and Esun were
Let's-
the same person.
But
Um,
before you say that, well, we'll talk about a little bit about Father Earth because you do get a little bit about the lore, right? Father Earth is like this being, and he came into existence, and he's letting people like live. He created like this planet, and he's letting the people, the inhabitants who are varying powers, live on there, and they abused his generosity or whatever, and they killed it. They mention it kind of in passing. They're like, okay, well, Father Earth became angry and is like punishing people because they killed his only son.
mhm.
They killed his
And we
son, and
don't know
that's
what
why he's
that
pissed.
we
We don't
don't know
know
what
what the
any of
fuck
that
that means. It's
means.
like it's an allegory, whatever.
Right.
However,
Until the very last line of this book,
hmm,
when he
yep,
says, "Tell me, have you ever heard of something called a moon?" And I was like, "What? There is no fucking moon." And when you go back to the beginning,
hmm,
we're essentially told that there's no moon.
yeah. Like she talks about, they talk about it there. She's talking about, they notice like stars and these things in the object, but they can't notice or pay attention to things that are not there and that they have never known to be there. And so this whole time they're like living in a world where there's no moon for balance. This is why the seasons are messed up. This is why they're suffering from all of these this the chaoticness, the environmental chaoticness as a punishment from Earth Father.
Right.
Whew.
So this whole Father Earth's only child, essentially we're probably talking about a moon, but no one knows what a moon is in this world because
Mhm.
it's been so long since they've had one.
Yep.
And the fact that the book ends there is what made me say like, okay, no, we gotta go back to the other books and do all of it.
Yeah. That's why we're gonna do all three.
So we're gonna do all of them. Here's a comment from Micah. Both of those segments allude to it. I caught on to the lack of a moon and guessed that something happened to it. I could not stop talking about it after the reveal. I
Yeah.
didn't guess that there was no moon. I was completely ignoring the fact that they mentioned the stars and the sun, and I ignored the Father Earth's only child. Like I ignored all of it because I was so focused on Esun finding her kid and what happened to Alabaster and all of that stuff. I was so focused on that I was not thinking about the lack of moon. And so when he says, tell me, have you ever heard of a moon? That reveal to me was really, really huge. And so on my
Yeah.
reread, that's when those things stood out to me.
Yeah.
The lack of a moon. I mean, nobody even knows what it is. So
Yeah. And I
we can
think it's really interesting because I mean, because we haven't really had a chance where we won't be able to talk about it this time and talk about kind of like how each chapter opens with those little passages from like Stone Lore or,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
like the interludes, because those are really important. They're not throwaway pieces of information. Same
No,
thing
they're
with like,
not.
just like Sanderson or someone else.
Right.
It's like these are essential to your knowledge of the world. They're not just like cute little ways to begin a chapter. So, or end a chapter, depending on where they're placed. So yeah. Whew. I cannot wait for the next book because I don't remember what happens. I remember the story for me like as a whole. It's not like this book, that book, this book. I like remember it as one
Right.
continuous thing, right?
No,
So it's
I'm
really
gonna.
hard to
I
know when to
waited.
stop.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to wait till we had this discussion before I started the second book. This comment, was there a mention of tides in Alia? I don't remember, but it's interesting to think what the ocean is like without a moon. They don't
Mhm.
specifically mention tides, but they talk about how dangerous it is to
Living
live
on the
on an
ocean.
island. Like people don't really travel by sea, and they don't really live
Hmm.
on islands
And they talk
because
about
there's
well,
always a
because
risk of
it's dangerous.
tsunami.
A risk of tsunami, and not just like 100-foot waves, but like waves the size of mountains, like
Yeah.
mountains of water coming at you.
And they probably, I don't know, maybe they just don't call it tides because we tie tides to the moon and they don't have a moon. So I don't
Hmm.
know. Um yeah, so reread it if you can, if you have enough time. We're gonna do
Listen to the
the
audiobook if not.
yeah, listen to the audiobook. We're gonna do the second book. We haven't set a date for it, but that will be in March. Actually, no, we do have
March.
a date for it
Were we
because
good?
I don't have my calendar here. We did have a date for it because it was the date we were gonna do the other book. Oh wait, let me check
Right.
my phone calendar.
Hold on. Let me look at my
Um,
phone.
the Obelisk Gate is the second book, so please go get it. I don't have it in front of me to show you,
I
but
do. Hold on.
oh, Nikki will show you the cover.
Ugh.
Oh no, we didn't set a date, Nikki. So when we do
Bing.
set a date, we'll tell you.
The
It'll be in March. There's the
Obelisk
Obelisk
Gate.
Gate.
That little
Um,
circle sticker is where it says Hugo Award winner, but you can't see it on here.
yeah, we didn't want to. It's almost 4:30. We didn't want to go too long, but
And I'm gonna
there's this. I
explode.
mean, there's just a million things to talk about with this story, and we try to cover as much as we can, but there's too much to talk about in like an hour. But definitely reread it. We'll cover the Obelisk Gate in March, and we'll give you the date for that at some point.
Yeah. AK.
Stormlight Archive. Yes, please read it, AK. Read Stormlight Archive. One day we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we
There's
were
another
trying to figure that
comment.
out.
Y'all are the reason why I found this series. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome. That
Aw.
makes me so happy. I'm so happy that you enjoyed it. I really love it
Yeah.
when people like something that I recommend. Did I recommend this to you, Nikki? I can't remember.
I did probably.
But yeah, no, I mean it's probably my current favorite series. So I'm really, really looking forward to March. That gives you roughly 2 months to read the second
That's
book,
enough
and
time.
yeah, you'll be able to cover it
It's enough
in
time to reread the first one and read the second one.
so go for it. Please do. We'll be back in
Yeah.
March. We'll post, follow us on Twitter, Thousand Eyes One, ONE, not the number. Follow us Facebook, A Thousand Eyes and One, Instagram, A Thousand Eyes and One, and book club stuff all gets posted to Instagram, Wine on an Empty Stomach. Um, we will cover Obelisk Gate in March. We're really looking forward to it. And, when we're talking about Obelisk Gate, we can always reach back and talk more about the season should the need arise, because there's just always so much more to talk about. But that's gonna
Oh
be
God.
that's
That's
gonna
funny.
be the end of the stream for us. Thank you guys so much for joining and for
Yeah.
to for you know your comments and everything. I really, really
Thanks
hope
for
that
engaging.
you read it. Yeah, no, I really hope that you guys read the next book so that we can talk about it, because I'm beyond excited about it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We will
Thank
talk
you.
to you later.
See you next
Bye.
time.